Thank you. It's a great pleasure to be with you on this beautiful day in Rome. And I thank my friend, Mr. Picci, and the Machiavelli Institute for organizing such an event. And I am indeed very distinguished to be amongst the two roses on the panel. It's perhaps not insignificant that in coming to this very room, we walked down a hall called the Transatlantic Bridge, or the Transatlantic Hall. So I'll make a few comments, if you will, about the U.S., Italy, and the future. When President Trump met with your Prime Minister recently in the Oval Office, and then again yesterday, and also with your President, they cemented a crucial and long-standing bilateral relationship with a key, I would argue even a central, European ally. Italy is distinguished by its glorious past as the spiritual birthplace of Western civilization. The pillars of our civilization, Roman law, Christianity, and the Latinate languages, share the genealogy of Italian pedigree. Every pope except the first few, a German and one particularly fine Pole, have called this country home for most of their lives. Italians themselves have also come to define and redefine America. Christopher Columbus and Amerigo Vespucci, the cartographer, gave America its very name and brought it into the family of European nations. Pope Gregory began the obelisk that commemorates President Washington, our first president, on the National Mall in Washington, D.C. We are steeped in a millennia, frankly, of cultural output by various Roman and Italian authors who our founders chose to reestablish our system of government precisely out of deference to the mothership of civilization, Italy. As liberty flourished in the Roman Republic long ago, so it has flourished on American soil. For that, we thank you. Between 1870 and 1930, the United States absorbed 18 million immigrants. More than 5 million were Italian. To the established American population, descended from earlier British, Scandinavian, and German immigrants, these foreigners were a new breed who looked, dressed, spoke, and prayed differently. The melting pot of America would surely be rather boring and bland without the Italians. Italian immigrants helped, you see, to build America, brick by brick. And in my American city, my hometown, Philadelphia, all of South Philadelphia was built by Italians. And their contribution to that city and so many other cities in America was overwhelming. Fiora di LaGuardia, of Jewish ancestry, still Italian, in politics in New York City. More recently, America's mayor, one of my good friends, Rudy Giuliani, to name but a few, who served with distinguished records of achievement. In science, Marconi. In sports, Joe DiMaggio, and hundreds more. They found their place in the land of the free and the home of the brave. Enter the movies. Coppola's films helped America fall in love with certain myths and with later television programs like The Sopranos. Americans came to peer inside Italian life in America. Like everyone else, they, the Italians, came to America in search of a dream, and they found it. Even when Italy fell into darkness, they managed to impress. Italian Navy groups were famously lethal during the Second World War, often outstripping the Royal British Navy despite not having developed radar technology, which the British had for years. After the war, Italy was one of the few countries versed in the modern governmental planning required by General Marshall and his celebrated Marshall Plan, which rebuilt this continent. During Marshall's tour through Europe as Secretary of State, he traveled very close to where we are right now. And one of his aides famously noticed that although the building they were having their meetings in barely had a roof, the Italians had put a vase full of flowers on the meeting table, commenting that a people who decorated ruins would surely recover swiftly. And within a decade, Italy had indeed recovered from devastation and was an integral part of the plan to reconcile the Europeans with each other. It is often forgotten these days that ever closer union was a condition of dispersing those original Marshall funds through such giants as Gasperi, who had been a member of the Austro-Hungarian Imperial Parliament, defending the interests of Italians his whole life. Shortly after the Treaty of Rome and the North Atlantic Treaty, Italy would be cemented on the side of freedom. The U.S. Army would gain some of the first counterinsurgency experience fighting Italian communist guerrillas and the Red Brigades, and the Iron Curtain would run along the border with Slovenia. America is certainly in the past, in the present, and in the future happy to have Italy, such a resourceful and valuable ally, on our team. Today, over 16 million people in the United States identify themselves as Italian Americans. They constitute nearly 6% of the entire U.S. population. Italian Americans are the fourth largest European ancestry group after Germans, Irish, and English. These Americans are the only European group whose population has actually increased since the 1990 census. A recent University of Chicago demographic study of 15 ethnic groups showed that these same Italian Americans were among those groups having the lowest percentages of divorce, lowest unemployment, the fewest people on welfare, and those incarcerated. In other words, they are among the groups with the highest percentages of two-parent families, elderly family members living at home, and families who eat together on a regular basis. The Italian Americans have learned something that, frankly, we could all remember and recall. Italian culture, food, wine, design, fashion, music. Think Frank Sinatra as icons of American culture in education, Montessori schools. The Italian contribution is truly without comparison, and the list, frankly, goes on and on. We could stay here the rest of the afternoon just listing what Italians have contributed to America. Did you know that Italy remains the favorite destination still today for American tourists and accounts for almost 12% of your Italian economy? Italy has also been long a leading security actor in Europe and in the world. It hosts the NATO War College, numerous UN bodies, remaining a keystone partner in the war against radical Islamic terrorism. Italy and America are NATO allies. Of course, that summit is happening even as we sit here, and they cooperate in missions as varied as fighting Somali pirates, tamping down refugee smuggling operations, and providing security in the Mediterranean, where Italy has long taken the lead. Under long-standing bilateral agreements flowing from NATO membership, Italy hosts critically important U.S. military forces. You know the names of those places. It is also the home port for the U.S. Navy's 6th Fleet. The United States has about 15,000 military personnel stationed in Italy this very day, and it's easy to envy their posts in such a fine country. Italy remains a strong and active transatlantic partner who, along with the United States, has sought to foster democratic ideals, core values, international cooperation in areas of strife and civil conflict. Italy is a dear relationship for America, and America is, because of the ties I have just mentioned, the most critical ally to Italy. So why Italy? Among the main Eurozone economies, Italy is the third largest, but also traditionally closer to the U.S. while economically intertwined with Germany and France. There is much greatness still ahead for Italy and America. Only a clear, long-term perspective of a new, strong economic relationship on both sides of the Atlantic makes that possible. One that matches our defense ties, that will provide the benefit of credibility and stability long into the future. Italy and America are, as I have been quoted saying in the last few weeks, joined at the hip. And it really couldn't and shouldn't be any other way. While transatlantic relations remain critical in an uncertain and fragile world which has already been described, so too are American relations with every European country, especially Italy. Italy, as I've recounted, has much to be proud of, and it is foremost a sovereign nation state. That identity surpasses any imposed notion of homogenized European coloration. Indeed, I, for one, do not believe that Italy should succumb to the forces of globalization or the dilution of its sovereignty only to be impaled on the sword of Brussels. You know, there is, and I'm talking to you as an American from the city of Philadelphia, there is such a thing as Italian pride, and not only in the Rocky movies. In this regard, there is still much to learn from the foremost cunning critic of political reason, also a famous Italian. His name was Machiavelli. In his primer on statecraft, The Prince, the Florentine suggested ways we need to recall today and into the future. Machiavelli was at his core a patriot who wrote, and I quote him, "I love my country more than my soul." And his book repeatedly betrays anguish at its downfall. His purpose, you see, was to find both the cause and the remedy for his city-state's misfortunes. By identifying the fundamental realities and cardinal rules of politics, he believed he could help to create a state, preferably a republic, that was both internally stable and just, and capable of defending itself from external aggression, secure even in its sovereignty. His object was to resurrect Florence from its corrupt and weakened state, and to transform it into, and I quote him again, a strong, united, effective, morally regenerated, splendid, and victorious patria, along the lines of the old Roman Republic. Returning to this state of glory would require a prince, leaders who possessed and cultivated within their citizenry those faculties prized by great men for all time, in the ancient world, I hope in the modern world that we inhabit. These traits include strength, skill, courage, loyalty, honor, civic sense, and public spiritedness, according to Machiavelli. My friends, in closing, I ask this question that Machiavelli himself raised long before there was a Donald Trump in America. Is it time to make Italy great again? Have courage and fortitude, two old Roman virtues, recalled also by Machiavelli when he said, "The lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves. One must therefore be a fox to recognize traps, and a lion to frighten wolves." Thank you.